Have you ever wondered why some people drown in life even though they are surrounded by others? Why some people fall apart even though they have friends, family, society, and even a church community? Why is it that some people lose everything in moments? If you really pay attention, you will notice a pattern in life. The moment you depend too much on people, you will eventually face disappointment. And sometimes, that disappointment can break you in ways that take years to recover from. This truth should shake every listener awake because it affects your spiritual life, your finances, your health, your relationships, and even your dignity. Before we go any further, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment. Your participation helps this message go further than this channel so that others can receive this practical message. Thank you. I have been making the point of depending on yourself and on God for a long time, but a lot of people misunderstand this message as a rejection of help, as though I said that you should never accept support from others. That is not the message. God places people in our lives who will help us, encourage us, lift us when we fall, and even give to us in our times of need. But please understand this. The help you receive from people will always be tiny compared to what you can do for yourself and what God can do through you when you take responsibility for your own life. Pause and reflect on a very deep truth. Who knows you more than you? No one knows your inner storms. No one feels your daily struggles. No one measures your silent tears. No one senses your every shift in emotion. No one can articulate your inner world the way you live it every minute. Not even your spouse, not your parents, not your best friend, not your pastor. They know what you tell them. You are the only one who carries your emotions 24 hours a day. You are the only one who hears your thoughts before they ever become words. You are the only one who stands inside your suffering and your joy. That is why Psalm 139 declares that God alone searches and truly knows you. If even you cannot explain your deepest feelings fully in words, how can another human being, even with good intentions, carry your life? How can they truly understand? How can they be your foundation? This is why true dependence must start with God and must continue with yourself. Every adult must adopt the mindset of self-dependence, not arrogance, not isolation, but responsibility. Many parents fail here because they never implant this mindset into their children. Some parents pamper their children into becoming fragile adults, unable to endure hardship, unable to carry responsibility, unable to stand on their own feet. When things go wrong, these parents will scream, blame, and throw tantrums in front of their children, teaching the next generation that someone else must fix their problems. They never teach the value of work. They never show the process behind the blessing. They let the children see the reward but hide the struggle that produced it. So the children grow up believing the world owes them something. They expect society to babysit them. They expect their spouse to fund them. They expect friends to carry them. They expect sympathy where they should show effort. And worst of all, they grow into adults who lack accountability. Because if you depend on others, you also depend on them to take the blame for your failures. But if you depend on yourself, you rise into responsibility, you confront your mistakes, and you grow from them. When Scripture says, each one should carry their own load, it was teaching spiritual maturity, emotional maturity, and financial maturity all at the same time. Depending on yourself ignites resourcefulness. When you know you are the one who must rise, think, plan, act, and overcome, something wakes up inside you. You begin to prioritize. You stop wasting. You stop upgrading for pleasure and start maintaining for purpose. You stop discarding things simply because culture pressures you to buy new. Resourcefulness is a spiritual discipline. Jesus himself instructed the disciples to gather the leftover fragments after feeding the multitudes, demonstrating stewardship, not waste. When you are self-dependent, You learn how to make yesterday's blessings stretch into tomorrow's victories. For example, instead of buying another phone because the camera is slightly better, you learn to use the one you have. Instead of constantly upgrading your car for image, you keep the one you have and invest the money. Instead of buying fast food every day, you prepare meals and save. These small actions build character and create the foundation for financial independence. They keep you out of debt. They allow wealth to grow. They stop the vicious cycle of reckless spending. Now consider this. When you fall sick and end up in a hospital, who has the most to lose, you or them? The hospital may care, but their system is built to make money. Hospitals have compassion, but they are also businesses governed by laws to prevent abuse, because without such laws, financial motivations might override medical ethics. That is why you cannot depend passively on anyone in that environment. You must understand that your life is your primary responsibility. You are the one who suffers the consequences if something goes wrong. You are also the first line of defense. Nobody will advocate for you with as much urgency as you will. You must ask questions. You must challenge decisions. You must understand your rights. If you don't, the system will move you like an object on a conveyor belt. And let's be honest, those who work in these systems feel compassion for the moment they interact with you, but once they leave your room, they return to their own lives. They are trained to comfort you, trained to speak gently, trained to show empathy. But that training does not mean they carry your pain with them when they go home. They don't, because your pain is yours. Your risk is yours. Your life is yours. And you know this because you yourself have seen people suffering, and after you speak with them, you may feel sympathy for a moment, but then your mind returns to your own responsibilities. So why would you expect others to treat your situation with more urgency than you treat theirs? Now let us turn to government assistance. The original intention was good, to lift families in times of crisis. But somewhere along the way, many began to treat temporary help as permanent identity. They seek loopholes, avoid work, and become dependent on benefits instead of building a future. They prefer free food, free housing, and minimal effort instead of rising into the fullness of what God called them to be. When Israel wandered in the wilderness, God fed them manna to sustain them temporarily, not permanently. The manna stopped the moment they reached the promised land because God wanted them to work, build, sow, reap, and prosper by their own hands. God blesses the work of your hands, not the laziness of your excuses. Government can help you, but government is not designed to sustain your entire existence. Government does not love you. Government does not raise your children. Government does not have emotional ties to your survival. Government can give and government can take. So, why place your destiny in the hands of a system that can change at any moment? As long as you are able-bodied and mentally capable, you must strive to work and build. You must seek independence. You must pursue financial stability. Because depending on yourself decreases your vulnerability. Depending on family members is even more dangerous. Family can help, yes, but ongoing dependence breeds resentment. It destroys relationships. It creates unspoken wounds. You may depend on a sibling for money, a cousin for housing, an uncle for bills. But if it becomes a pattern, bitterness grows, love weakens, disrespect develops. The giver feels drained, the receiver feels ashamed, and the relationship crumbles. Even in marriage, depending on your spouse does not remove your personal responsibility. A spouse can support you, but if anything happens to them, sickness, job loss, death, what will you do if you never learned how to stand on your own? People proudly say, "My husband handles the money," or "My wife handles everything." That is dangerous. It is risky. Every partner in a marriage must learn, must work, must understand money, must plan. You cannot afford ignorance when your future is at stake. And depending on your children when you're old is another trap. You must save and invest now so you are not a burden later. Children today live in a world far harsher and more expensive than the world you grew up in. They have their own financial storms. They have their own families. They have responsibilities you never had at their age. They may love you, but loving you does not guarantee they can carry you. Do not shape your later years into a battlefield of resentment. Plan now so you can live with dignity later. Depending on friends is the most fragile dependence of all. Friends are not tied to you by blood or covenant. They can walk away. You can walk away. Friends change. Seasons change. Interests change. A friend who once stood close can become distant in a moment. So why make them the foundation of your survival? Let friendship be friendship, not a financial plan, not an emotional crutch, not a life strategy. Look around the world. Many developing countries have almost no public assistance, yet people survive through self-reliance, community effort, discipline, and resourcefulness. They fix instead of replace. They work instead of wait. They adapt instead of complain. Meanwhile, people in developed nations drown in debts, dependency, and entitlement because they believe someone else should rescue them. But the lesson is clear. Self-reliance is not just survival. It is wisdom. It is strength. It is dignity. It is biblical. And it is the mindset every Christian should embrace if they want to walk in God's fullness. Psalm 121 says, "My help comes from the Lord, not from the government, not from family, not from friends, not from society." And God's help empowers you to rise, you to work, you to build, you to take responsibility. Faith is not laziness. Faith is not dependency. Faith is partnership with God through action. Thank you so much for joining us today. If this message spoke to you, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more inspiring teachings and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new post. Remain blessed, and we'll see you next time.